Hey, good. No, I'll be hanging around because I got to be bringing some books to sell too. Yes, please. I haven't gotten any more in yet. I think I remember which one you're talking with the little mask on it.
And that's what Ray Chesney, she's the director.
Oh, I think I remember,
programs
but I
for
hadn't
the
gotten any
trust.
more in yet. But
And
we're
so
gonna get
that's
some.
how
Yes,
I
ma'am.
invited her to speak with Dr. Ashley Lay last year, and then so that's how we're collaborating on the summit. All right, everybody, we're gonna go ahead and get started here. Thank you all for being here today. Welcome to the Oak Cliff Cultural Center. I'm Andrea Toston. I'm Cultural Programs Coordinator here at the center. And OC3 is a division of the City of Dallas Arts and Culture. And we are here today in celebration of anthropologist, folklorist, writer, documentary filmmaker, artist, Zora Neale Hurston. We're going to be celebrating all day, and we're going to kick it off here with Akwete in just a little bit, and I'll introduce Akwete in just a little bit. I also want to mention that next Saturday, Oracle, Danielle Ellis's solo exhibition is going to be opening at 6 o'clock, and it's going to run through February the 22nd. And also, I'll also mention again here that we have Letitia Huckabee here, the artist of this beautiful exhibition, Selected Works from Bitter Water Sweet. We're so fortunate to have the work here for the festival and running through February the 8th. Letitia spent some time in Africa Town, and that's a direct connection to the book Barracoon, where Zora Neale Hurston interviewed one of the last survivors of the last slave ship, the Cotilda. And now, without further ado, I'm going to introduce Akwete Tyehimba.
Okay.
She's the CEO of one of the largest retail African art galleries in the world, specializing in books on the history, health, and forward movement of Black people. Her vision is to connect African peoples scattered globally with our great history, culture, and collective strength, uniting African peoples and the upliftment of humanity worldwide. Let your history guide you. If you let someone else guide your history, it may guide you down a path of exploitation, says owner Tyehimba. And without further ado, we're going to have a presentation about Zora Neale Hurston from Akwete. Thank you so much for being here. We're honored to have you. Thank you. Oh, I can hit it.
Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you. How y'all doing? Wonderful. Well, I'm so happy to be here. And, to be honest with you, I'm just happy to be away from the shop, right? So people say, we never see you away from that bookstore. So when I see folks in the grocery store, they be so excited, like, we thought you lived in the bookstore. I go, it feels like it a lot of times, right? But let me just say how happy I am to be here to speak with you. It's always good to be among the people, and it's always good to have the opportunity to discuss our sheroes and heroes, right? Those folks that have made great sacrifices for us to be here today, especially Miss Zora Neale Hurston. The power of storytelling is a lineage that we come from as African people, as Black people in this country. And it's just a part of who we are. It's a part of our culture. Zora, she was a master of making sure that our truths are told. And I'm so happy that I'm sorry, Andrea asked me to be a part of it because it made me go back to remember what I love so much about Zora, and it's because she preserved the voices of our elders, right, and our ancestors that many of us have grown to be ashamed of, or we become such academics that we don't want to talk the old talk, right? We don't want to say, like my mother used to say, that she was going to the hospital, right? I'm going, what's the hospital? But that's the hospital, right? or I want to help you out, right? And that was really to help you out, right? So these are the voices and the expressions that Zora wanted to preserve and maintain for our history and in our memory. Let me just briefly go start here. Okay. All right. So let me first of all thank the organizers of this event because, it takes a lot of work to put things like this together. I know it looks easy on the outside, but on the outside looking in. But Andrea and the staff here, this is the second festival that you've done. So let's give them a big round of applause. Because this is Zora's 134th year, and it is something to celebrate. All around the country, organizations like this in our community are celebrating Dora. So it is keeping her alive, keeping her work alive, just as Alice Walker did when she wrote the piece In Search of Zora, right? That she went to Fort Pierce, Florida, and found her grave and made sure that there was a headstone, and then made sure she resuscitated Zora's life in her work. So this is in part of what you're doing today, making sure that Zora's life and work is not forgotten. So she is finally getting her due that she well deserves. So just definitely want to give a big up to the Oak Cliff Cultural Center here and with this Office of Cultural Affairs here in Dallas. So let me just say, I want people to first hear Zora's voice. So I think the next one, Zora has this voice that is very unique, but it definitely shows that she is connected to and very connected to what she's doing. Go ahead, sister.
That is evidently come from Africa. Dr. Hurston would say that he saw the background of it in West Africa, of the crow. The crow in some ways seems to be sacred in Africa. But what they're talking about is what we know in the United States as a buzzard. And the buzzard comes to get something to eat, and they are talking about it, and they dance it. And one person gets in the center and imitates the buzzard, and and the rest of them follow the background. Oh, mama, come see that old green house is mine. Oh, mama, come see that old green house is mine. Let's go on Friday night. Green house is mine. Let's go on Friday night. Green house is mine. Oh, mama, come see that old green house is mine. Oh, mama, come see that old green house is mine. Let's go on Friday night. Green house is mine. Let's go on Friday night. Green house is mine. Oh, mama, come see that old. Ah! Oh, mama, come see that old. Ah! Oh, mama, come see that old. Green house.
So Zora said that folklore is the art of the people who don't know there is such a thing as art. Our folklore, our voice, what she called the idiom of expressions, right? Not dialect or something that academics wanted to talk about how we talk, but she said it's an art. It's something to be looked as divine, right? As close to God, as an art of resistance. This dialect, these folk stories, this that she wanted to preserve is part of our resistance to of slavery, right? It's a part of our It's just a part of our genius, right, of resisting the English language. There were some scientists that said, oh, they talk that way because their lips are too big, right? They can't even pronounce the English language well, right? So they were saying we were too stupid to speak English. And English, of course, many of us still do it today. I don't talk correctly English all the time, right? and my husband, Vandelli, who passed away, he said, oh, he can't even talk good English. And really, he wasn't trying to. So sometimes our people weren't trying to assimilate or be like, this. They wanted to maintain a part of their culture, a part of their Africanness, a part of the art of who they authentically are. So Zora encouraged other writers to celebrate themselves, use our own language, to celebrate our own voices and the voice of our people, to celebrate the authenticity of self, celebrate the stories of our people without shame or diminishing who we are. She often said that, we have nothing to be ashamed of, right? Her one quote, she says, I don't know if I have it there, but it says, I'm not tragically colored. She doesn't feel like she's a victim of our history, She received a lot of criticism from folks she called Negrotarians, right? She was criticized by W. Du Bois. She was criticized by Richard Wright, right, for sort of maintaining this legacy of language, or that's not so-called intelligent, right, or at a low level of existence. And they said that during that time in the 20s, 30s, from the 30s to the 50s, that we should be talking about more race issues, right? More of how people are being lynched and how we should be organizing ourselves to maintain a higher status in life. But Zora was very in line with Booker T. Washington, right? That there's nothing for us to be ashamed of and who we are and how far we've come. We have a long way to go, but to celebrate where we are, celebrate those small things that make us unique to ourselves. Zora wanted to I'm sorry, excuse me. These are some of the writers that said Zora influenced him. You can't see, but of course we have Nikki Giovanni, who was a great ancestor now, who said her legacy is a testament to the enduring impact of storytelling. We have Maya Angelou. Her writings are a celebration of the resilience and strength of Black culture. We have, of course, we know Alice Walker was an admirer. We have how do you say her name? Ngozi Adichie, who is a very celebrated author now, who says Zora Neale Hurston's work is a celebration of Black identity and culture. So that's huge, and that's part of what we should all do. It's a huge part of what we do at the Pan-African Connection Bookstore, is to celebrate our history and culture at all levels or all costs. Zora got criticized, more than she got praised a lot of times, right? But she didn't care. Zora carved her own path. She said, I do not weep the world. I do not weep at the world. I am too busy sharpening my own oyster knife. She's too busy working, trying to get things done, right? You don't have time to cry over everything, right? She had a lot of struggles. She came up against a lot of challenges. After graduating from the elite school of Barnard College in New York, she went back to Eatonville, Florida, to do research among her people. She could have gone anywhere, but she went back home to study her people. And they were even a little skeptical about, why are you asking all these questions, So she had to, she knew them, but she still had to be among them. There's a quote that says, what is it? To be you know, you have to be there to be there, I guess, something like that. You know, you have to go there to be there. So you have to go there to know, but you have to be among the people to know the people. So she definitely, you know, engulfed herself with the people, which is something that as academics we don't always do. Let's see. Dora wanted to document. She was an anthropologist. She wasn't just a writer like James Lawrence Dunbar or Langston Hughes or Richard Wright or a lot of these people. She was an anthropologist, which she had to fight for that title in many ways, right? They said the big white historians whom she looked up to said she didn't have the credentials to go and truly do the research of a quote unquote real anthropologist. She didn't have the skills to do the you know, all the numbers and all this research of a true anthropologist. But we have to see her as an anthropologist. She was someone who wanted to preserve our history and our legacy, our traditions. You know, Dora would, she went to study voodoo, or Vodun, right? She went to New Orleans. They paid for her to go to Jamaica and Haiti. But it is so interesting during this time between the 1930s and 50s, this woman wanted to make sure that our rituals, our traditions were documented, right? Not just from a European perspective of, you know, y'all remember those movies when the zombies were all, and they used to stick needles and pins and voodoo dolls, and then they put a black face. That's the type of Vodun or voodoo that they associated with Africa and African traditions. But Zora wanted to dispel all of that, right? She did go to New Orleans, where she actually participated in different initiation ceremonies. That's huge, right? And you could risk your whole life. You don't, you know, but she took the risk. It's like many artists will make themselves a part of the art, right? She made herself a part of her own research. This story is so cool, you know, how they finally gave her a man's number in New Orleans to go and get trained or get some work done, and she laid on a table for 69 hours, butt naked, on a piece of snake skin. And once her ritual was over, they think they drew some lightning bolts on her back or something like that. But she went through this initiation ceremony, right? Which she didn't know if she would come out, you know, okay, but she did. So she took many risks in doing her research. She documented sermons, right, of preachers, you know, because, you know, don't nobody preach. We got some of the best speakers in the world, and a lot of those people come out of the church, are preachers and ministers. So she wanted to make sure she documented those sermons. She documented our children playing games, and, you know, Miss Mary Mack and all this. And our people are very creative. She wanted to make sure that Southern history and traditions and our creative genius was just not written off as something, oh, these primitive little folks are doing. But in fact, sometimes you have to learn, you know, some of the truths, and the greatest genius comes from so-called primitive people, right? So she had this white patron, and I think her name was Martha, Oswald, something. But this was the same white patron, you know, during the Harlem Renaissance, you had these white benefactors, right, with big money. So they would make sure that Langston Hughes had money to do his work. Alain Locke had money to do his work, and Zora had money to do her work. But this was a woman who had lots of money, but she loved indigenous heritage. She loved Black culture, but only from her perspective, right? But she paid Zora, she paid all these folks to go out and do this research for her. But it was like they were, you know, they were beholden to her at every level. Zora had to document every penny she spent while she was, you know, doing this research. She had to send it back to this white woman who really controlled all her research. Zora had no rights to it. She couldn't go and publish the research she did in these southern states, she couldn't do it because this white woman had full control of her work. But I remember seeing a list, Dora, there's this book documenting all of her letters, many of her letters that she wrote. And so she has this list of, I spent $15 on, this. I spent 10 cents on this, even down to her sanitary feminine needs. She had to document. And so, but Zora had a lot of respect for this woman, which all of them who received money had to call her godmother, right? So she had a love-hate relationship with this godmother. And so this godmother, she finally cut ties with this godmother, which was really painful, but yet liberating all in once, right? Because she was no longer beholden. She could do her work as she needed to do it. But just coming back to the culture and how she wanted to make sure, this is a letter she wrote, not sure to whom, but it was, there's a book that just came out January the 7th it's about King Herod. It's her, I don't know the exact title, I wrote it down here, but it's a brand new book about, it's a manuscript that was burned, almost burned, after she died, when they, after somebody dies in the South, sometimes if you have no children, they just take all your stuff to the backyard and set it fire, right, just to clear out the house. So luckily there was this police officer, security of some law enforcement, they were passing by and they lived in her, and they saw this fire going, and they said, oh, that's Miss Hurston's house. So they stopped, they got the water hose and put put the fire out. But this is one letter that was found, but she talks about history and culture. Zora says, seek the heart of the matter, know history. There is no more ready corrective or conduct than knowledge of our past. Be a realist and a rationalist. Mere facts are worthless except through their interpretation. It is history and history alone which, without involving us, is in actual danger, will mature our judgment and prepare us to take the right views, whatever may be the crisis or the posture of affairs. So she understood history is important to us. And one thing Zora also wanted to make sure we understood, that no matter how horrible and traumatic our history is, there is still joy, right? And love. While she was doing research for her godmother in the South, she tried to sneak in a little segment or pictures on Black love. And she took photos of Black men and women couples. And they were, you don't hear much about it, but she wanted to document Black love, which was they didn't want to, that was not part of her job at that time, but that was not what godmother wanted her to do. But she saw Black love and she wanted us to know and feel Black love. So love runs through, the seeking of love and joy runs through many of her works, right? So Black love was also something she wanted us to express. And there's so much we could talk about about her. I just kind of want to focus on the history and the culture and the preservation of our authenticity and our divine selves, and how she, similar to August Wilson, wanted to be on the grocery store porch with the men, right, telling the biggest lies they could tell, right? My mother used to say when the men would go out to the backyard, oh, they out there telling them they're gonna see who could tell the biggest lie. I say, what? What's she talking about? Same thing with Zora. They would be on the grocery store porch across the street from her house, right, in Eatonville, Florida, all talking, see who could tell the biggest lie. But they were story. That was a part of their joy, right? So let me just get on. So she was a very spiritual person. Spiritual meaning connected to her destiny or her purpose, right? And a lot of her books she wrote, she had to fight like hell to make sure that the wording was exactly like she heard it, right? And that they didn't try to change it so that it would be easier for white folks to read. No, she fought tooth and nail for it to be authentic, just as she heard it, right? She didn't go through all that, going through the South, going to the turpentine mines and to, the juke joints and all this, to not tell the story as it should be told. So she fought like hell to make sure that our stories were told correctly. Let's see. And let's see, and I just want to make sure that we all understand the risk that she took. She traveled with a pistol. You say, why would she have to travel with a pistol? Because she was among people who didn't know her. She would go to these, to the railroad tracks where they were beating making the railroads, and they folks didn't trust her. Why is she asking all these questions? So she had to make up stories, and she was really good at making up stories, right? She told some big lies herself, right? So she would tell them she was on the run from some big mobster or something, right? And she told a big story, and they said, "Oh, okay, we trust you. You can hang around. You can ask us questions, right?" And one other, she was criticized because she lied about her age, right? Even to get into high school, at the age of 9, her mother passed, and at 13, her father quit paying her tuition at a boarding school, and so she was really on her own. She went to live with relatives, but from the age of 16 to 26, there's hardly any recollection of her life or what she was doing during that time. But at the age of 26, she somehow got back into high school. She graduated, and she went on to Howard University for a couple of years, and then she was encouraged to go to New York to be a part of the Harlem Renaissance. But to get into Barnard College, or to get into Howard University, she actually lied about her age. She actually said she was younger than she actually was. So, hey, she made her own path, right, through storytelling. So I just want to say how much she loved her people. She loved her people so much. The story about the last slave ship, Barracoon. How many of y'all read that one before? Okay. So that book tells about the last slave ship that we know of, right, to come to the United States, that landed in a place called Africatown in Alabama. But she interviewed one of the last slaves that who came as an enslaved person to this country, and his name was Oluwale Kusulo. And so, but in doing so, she couldn't, Zora knew how you don't tell white folks everything, right? You don't tell nobody everything, especially if they come to you asking a lot of questions. So she had to get this Cujo, which they called him, to trust her. She would bring him ham and bring him all kinds of treats, right? And she had to spend a lot of time with him. Finally, he started talking to her. But what she was wanting to do is to preserve our culture, make sure that we knew who we are and where we came from, to connect our place here back to Africa, right? So for her to do that, she knew that her history did not start in slavery, right? It started in Africa as free men and women. And let's see what else I have on my notes here. But I just kind of want to end with, because I could end with many things, that she died her life was a tragic ending. And she died sort of alone. And I don't want to go through some of the really negative things that happened in her, because some people seem to only focus on those things, right? But we want to make sure that, that she sacrificed a lot. She died in obscurity, poverty. She died a very lonely death. And it was all not because for her own self, because she could have made a lot of money writing, right? She could have done many things with the talent that she had in storytelling. She could have, she could have been a Langston Hughes, to me, she was even as grand, right? But she chose to tell our stories. So she paid the price of offering us, her folk, and she was also a part of the folk, a firsthand and unmitigated representation of Black/African culture. And she showed our beautiful humanity and our worth. And she taught us to love ourselves. She taught us not to be ashamed of our Black language, our Black expressions. She taught us to understand that we are as close to God as it gets. We are divine. And not only are we as close to God as it gets, that God is also with us, watching us at all times. So, thank you. And you always make all these notes in power presentations, and you sometimes don't even look at it. So, yeah, but I'm here to ask any questions or anything you like.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, let me see. We can pass around, or would y'all mind coming up to the mic? You put it out a little ways. Any questions?
How many of you read Their Eyes Were Watching God? What's your favorite part of that book?
I read it so long ago.
Oh, okay.
27 years.
Anybody tell me what their favorite part of it or what they remember about it? So we can just have conversation. It doesn't have to be a question. It's not a student-teacher relationship. I don't like that, no way. So just anything you want to say about Zora, please feel free.
I was really intrigued when you were talking about her as an anthropologist, and I think you also mentioned like storytelling, which storytelling we think of a lot in African American culture. That's just part of it. We all have people in the family who know everything, right? And they're happy to tell you things. And that's sort of natural.
A little bit. I was watching a little.
Even personally as an artist, I always go into the communities that I'm working with, and there's a sort of a Black way of doing things. You don't walk into a house and not speak to everybody in the room. And so then you don't go and tell somebody's story and not show respect to them. And I heard that, and you were describing how Zora works with the community, like bring a hand, a Cujo, or whatever. There was this okay, let me slow down and really be in this place, really connect with these individuals, not just tell their stories. And I've been working with Freedmen's Towns, and that was different in Tulsa, where the race massacre happened. Like of all the communities that I visited, that one had a sort of generational trauma, and it was because of that very thing, because of around the time of their centennial, there was a former president who was planning on doing a rally there, and it drew all this kind of attention. Press was coming in from all over the place, but they weren't connecting with the people. They just wanted to tell the story. So then the people were shutting down. Whereas in Africa Town, it's totally different because these individuals, they know their history, they know who their ancestors were that came over on a slave ship, they know their culture, they know some of their dances and their songs, and so the experience of visiting them is totally different in that they feel like now I have something that you don't have, and I can share that with you as another Black person. And so that really struck me listening to you talk about her as an anthropologist, because we don't think about those interactions that way. We think of it as like decency, but also a strong desire to know and understand.
Yeah, we think of, when we see anthropology, we just see Jane Goodall, and,
Right.
you know, and all of this. But you know, Zora was an anthropologist. She's preserved the memory of her people, the history. It's preserving history, and she was just preserving our traditions and our memory to remind us that that we're more than just this trauma that we're given, right? So yeah, she was preserving history, in which our ancestors, we preserve oral history, and I love the way she was singing, because in Africa, in storytelling, that's how you tell stories, right? That's how you teach the children about what to avoid. You know, if it's, you would get on the ground, act like a monkey. That's how you go act like a lion. But you would tell stories through drama and the arts, right? You just didn't read from a book or no, you would act it out. Mm-hmm. So Zora, understood that too. Go ahead.
I'm glad you shared the story about Alice Walker looking for her grave and then taking responsibility for it. That's how I found this author, because I was a huge fan of Walker's, and I thought, if she's going to all this trouble to locate and honor someone's gravesite, this person must be marvelous. And this is, of course, before internet, where you could Google everything. So I went to the library, and my first book was Their Eyes Were Watching God, and just fell in love with her writing. So I appreciate you mentioning that.
I love the writing, and it's just how Alice Walker, she said she was just walking. She went to the gravesite. She was walking. She said, "Okay, Zora, show me where you are." And she stopped. Zora told her where she was. So you have to definitely honor your ancestors, right? And all of these writers who write, and now who are very confident in writing about their ancestors and all of our traditions. They're descendants of Zora, right? And even those like Langston Hughes, these people all, we all, in arts you copy each other, right? So they also are, very, should be very grateful for Zora's writing. And we call her Zora because she would want us to call her Zora. And, but she took a lot of criticism in her life. And she even was resolved in the end of her life to working as a maid, right, for this white woman in Fort Pierce. And so the press got a hold of it, and they said, "Oh, this famous writer is now working as a maid." And so she, came with another good story, like, "Oh, I was just doing research, for a story," right? So Zora was really good at telling stories, and she wrote an autobiography called Dust Tracks on the Road, which I hope everyone can read. But it just tells about her life, and she was criticized. They said, "Oh, she got too many fibs and lies in that thing." She said, "You think some of my life is private? I don't have to tell y'all everything." So it's her life is. She has a very interesting life, and she lives on. So as long as we are here talking about her. Any other comments?
I only have one comment. I guess I feel where she was most transparent was when she did Tell My Horse, that book, and her Haitian experience, and that was probably one of the most difficult and daunting tasks of really going to Haiti and experience the death of African spirituality. And I think she was just so beautifully transparent.
Yeah, I mean, just the courage to go to Haiti, Jamaica. And while she was in Jamaica, she did research on the Maroons and the history of resistance in Jamaica. She learned Creole when she went to Haiti. Y'all know how hard it is to learn Creole? Or you go to Jamaica, I don't know what nobody's saying, right? Because it's just a whole nother language. But she learned Creole, and she made sure she brought back a more authentic representation of Vodun, and not this Hollywood version of Vodun that's given to us. So voodoo and Vodun. So, any other comments? Well, thank y'all. We appreciate y'all. Give it up for
Just thank Akwete again. Thank you so much. That was so wonderful. All of the things that you mentioned, it brought back memories of reading the books like Mules and Men when she was initiated with different practitioners. And of course, it was wonderful to mention Barry Coon. And it was so wonderful the exchange that you and Letitia had about Africatown and everything as well. And you also mentioned her alma mater, Barnard. As a matter of fact, we're having the Festival Dallas here today in celebration of Zora Neale Hurston. There's also going to be the first ever Zora Neale Hurston Summit at Barnard College in New York City, the weekend of January 31st through February 1st. And Ray Chesney is the Director of Programs for the Zora Neale Hurston Trust, which we are also, I want to say thank you to the Zora Neale Hurston Trust. I should have mentioned that earlier, for being a part of helping this happen today. And the family is going to be there. Letitia is going to have work at the summit. Jess Garland is participating in the summit. Musician, artist here in the audience as well today. Brandy Waller-Pace is going to be coming up from Dallas. And Ashley Jordan, who is going to be teaching the Adinkra printmaking workshop here today, is also going to be participating in the summit. So we're going to be representing, Dallas is going to be representing in New York City here in a few weeks. And we are happy to be part of it. So grateful to the Zora Neale Hurston Trust, Ray Chesney, who actually is also known as the Zora Girl. She actually participated, was in conversation with Dr. Ashley Wade last year on the live, which you can also find on our Instagram page. That's another thing. Dr. Ashley Wade is also going to be participating in the summit as well. So Dallas will be representing. We're just so happy to be in celebration of Zora here today. So what we're gonna do now is there are refreshments that are laid out. We're gonna switch the room over for the workshop that's gonna be happening at 2. What time is it now? 1:13. So we have a little bit of time. So what we'll do is just let everyone just make themselves comfortable. Please enjoy the art in both spaces. And then I'll come back and let everyone know when we're gonna switch the room over. We'll have to clear it out and then we'll be able to come in for the workshop, okay? Sound good? All right, thank y'all so much. Thanks again, Akwete.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, thank you. Oh, thank you. I'm doing wonderful. Good to see you. Oh, I remember. Yes, ma'am. Good to see you. Yes, ma'am. Oh, I put this computer. Oh, I hope that was okay. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. You covered all of the bases. So appreciative.